Welcome to Selnar's Minis. Today I will be painting an orc from the Reaper Miniatures Bone 6 Kickstarter. As always, paint fearlessly. It's just paint, you can fix any mistakes. Also, please like, subscribe, and or comment to this video to help my channel grow. As you can see, these are the paints that I used for this project on the turntable currently. We're going to start off with a prime of Vallejo black that I brushed on. And the first paint we're going to use is Vallejo Game Color Khaki. And I'm going to use this for the padded armor that this orc is wearing, and I'm going to apply this in 2 thin coats. After I finish with the padded armor, I'm going to go ahead and start on several of the leather areas using an orangey brown, which is Army Painter's Dirt Spatter. This is going to be for his mantle and for his shoes. I'm going to go ahead and apply 2 thin coats on this as well. Alright, and we're going to have a real quick turnaround of where we're at currently with this model. From here, we're going to go ahead and use Necromancer Cloak to base coat all the areas that I want to be steel later on, like his helmet and the metal plate on the back of his mantle and portions of the crossbow. This orc also has a cleaver on his side, which apparently he is using as a hand weapon, so I will go ahead and base that in this color as well. For the skin regions, we're going to go ahead and base layer with a mixture of Necromancer Cloak and Field Gray. This is going to be a 1-to-1 ratio. In the end, this pretty much ended up being just the legs, his hands, and his face. And as you will see here in a few moments, I had the severe case of dropsies. Several times actually in this video. Little, kind of humorous side note. For the clothing of this orc, I went with a new color from Warpaint Fanatics. Nice Guy, which is kind of a dark gray blue. I applied this to the loincloth and his shirt. For the remaining leather areas on this model, which is the belt, the strap that holds the quarrels, and the straps that holds the cleaver to his belt, I'm going to use leather brown. See me in this particular clip use the brush to wipe away paint in areas I don't want it. This is something you can do in order to quickly remove paint that you've accidentally put in the wrong area. What you do is you clean off your brush really quick, like get it moist and go in and wipe it away. You got to be pretty quick about this, because if you let it sit too long, it'll dry and stain the color underneath. Also, you're going to notice in some of these clips as well is that the new light I have is causing a reflection to be more noticeable off the ferrule of the brush and into the camera. The next color I'm going to use is oak brown, and this is going to be for the main body of the crossbow and to set up the knee pad to be painted in a orange metal of some sort. I know which one, but at the time I wasn't sure. We're going to go ahead and go around and do this, and I'll be back in a few moments. Alright, and the orc has a rope wrapped around his wrist that you can see in this particular shot. And I'm going to go ahead and differentiate that with hemp rope instead of cocky in order to provide some variation. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. After the hemp rope dried, I decided to go ahead and start shading. As you can see, these are the shades that I used, and they are going to be in various mixtures or straight. So for the leather mantle and for the padded armor, I went ahead and used strong tone, which is like a dark brown. For the cloth bits, I went ahead and used dark tone, which is black. And for the skin, I used the plague shader and strong tone together to get kind of a darkish greenish brown, kind of like a Thino camo shade, but at a level that I wanted. So I'm just going to go around and apply all this, and then I'll be back after it dries. Speaking of drying, I should make it clear that this particular set of shades from Army Painter seem to take a little bit longer to dry compared to some other companies. I really like the effects, but it's a good 30 to 40 minutes for these to dry completely. Another humorous note. It is apparent to me that I need to film full-length videos a little bit more frequently. It's been a while since I produced one, and I constantly was fighting to keep the subject matter in the field of view. So I apologize for those times that I'm painting something and I slowly disappear off the bottom of the screen and then quickly try to readjust. Okay, after the shades had dried, I decided that I should go ahead and dry brush the crossbow first. This was in case if I accidentally hit other areas with the color that I was using, I could easily fix them. I'm going to start off with returning to the oak brown, And then after that dried, I went ahead and mixed a oak brown and khaki together. I believe I did 2 more layers of this. The first one was a 1-to-1 mixture, and then I went ahead and did a 1-to-2 mixture. So that would be 1 part oak brown to 2 parts khaki. I really liked the way this looked after I was done. I kept all the shade in the recesses of the wood grain and highlighted the top parts of the crossbow. I also did this with the quirls as well. The process of returning everything back to the base layers and then highlighting up. I'm going to be doing a lot of this. I'm going to go to the khaki and do this with the padded armor. And then after I do this khaki, I'm going to go ahead and mix khaki and skeleton bone together. And so the khaki and skeleton bone is going to be a 2-to-1 mixture to start off with. It's going to be 2 parts khaki, 1 part skeleton bone. I'm going to go ahead and highlight the top ends of the pattern near the belt. And then after I get done with doing that mixture, I'm going to go ahead and go to a 1-to-1 mixture of 1 part khaki to 1 part skeleton bone. And I believe that is the highest I went on the highlight for the pattern. I wanted to keep it kind of more of a khaki color, but a little bit lighter. And then there's another instance of me accidentally hitting an area I didn't want to hit, so I went and took a moist brush and wiped it away. And then returned back to the brush I was using to start highlighting some more. Okay, going back to our night sky, I'm going to go ahead and base layer that back over. The dark tone really darkened down this color, so this was kind of a very much in your face, wow, lighten back up, but needed to be done, and I wanted to keep the recesses super dark, so I didn't go back over and start over. So I'm going to go around and add the night sky, and then when I get ready to highlight it, I'm going to take night sky and wolf gray. Now the wolf gray is from the original war paint army painters, and the night sky is from the war paint fanatics. So there is a big difference in the pigment content between these two paints. Night sky having way more than wolf gray, so it was more plain by ear to see some color change without being too drastic. Normally I would go for a 2-to-1 if these were the normal war paints, in other words the same pigment density, because night sky has way more pigments in it than the wolf gray. It ended up being more like 4 to 5 to 1. You're just gonna have to play around with it if you want to do the same thing to get the color that I got or something similar. After I finished this layer, I went ahead and added more wolf gray to the mixture to get more of a 1-to-1 ratio. And This, as you can see, is lighter than the previous one, but once again, that night sky with its dense pigments definitely makes it hard to figure out exactly how much you need to mix in order to get the ratio that you want. And then after this, I went straight to wolf gray, just to get some brighter highlights. I really liked the way this ended up looking on the model. I was pretty happy with it. Alright, at this point I returned to the leather mantle and the leather shoes, and I started off with dirt spatter. I went ahead and hit all the areas that I wanted to bring back the original color. I definitely left a lot of the shade in the recesses and in other areas that I felt that the light would not hit. While I bring these base layers back up, let's talk about why I did this video. Besides the fact that it's a brand new miniature from Reaper that is not on the market for most people yet, it was part of a Kickstarter. I wanted to participate in Orctober. You heard me. Not October, Orctober. So I had done a short last year this time, and I had done an orc, but I'd added some goblins to it, and I got a little bit of feedback on that and decided just to paint an orc this time. And I kind of like painting greenskins lately. Technically this guy is a greenish gray, but that's okay. They've been kind of fun. There's no real hard rules with them, not like with dwarves or elves or other races. Mind you, I do change those up too, but I kind of wanted to paint a video on an orc and share it with you guys. Alright, so once I finished reapplying the base layer of the dirt spatter in the areas I wanted to be in, I went ahead and started the highlighting process for these orangish brown leathers. I'm going to take 2 parts dirt spatter and 1 part leather brown and go ahead and start highlighting the areas I want to be brighter. These, of course, are going to be much smaller than the original base layer colors. The idea is to provide a nice transition, and I'm going to go around and do this for the mantle and the shoes. And then when I'm done with that, I'm going to go ahead and do a 1-to-1 ratio of dirt spatter and leather brown to highlight it further. So I'm going to go around and apply these highlights, and I will talk to you soon. After I'd finished those leather regions, I went back to leather brown, and I brought the leather areas, the belt, the straps, and the bracer that I had not told you about earlier, back up with the leather brown. And then I did not videotape this. I also went to monster brown and hit the straps to brighten them up, and hit the leather belt in certain areas to bring it back up. Now, I did videotape me using the monster brown, but I did not videotape me showing the monster brown, so I wanted to make sure that you guys knew that had been used. After I'd finished that process, I decided I wanted to start working on the knee pad. And to start off with, to give it kind of a weathered look, I was going to go ahead and paint it a dark greenish blue. This is P3's coal black. It does not look like coal. It looks like a very dark greenish blue. I'm going to use this as the base layer for the initial corrosion on copper. Copper does not turn into that very light greenish blue color that most people think of when they think of copper being tarnished, but the initial color is this bluish green. And then I decided, while I waited for that to dry, I was going to work on the orc skin. So we returned to the necromancer cloak and field gray. We're going to go back to that 1-to-1 ratio to bring the color back up. The shade had done a great job in bringing it down, so I just needed to make it a little bit more vibrant again. And then after I finished this process, I went ahead and did a 1-to-2 ratio of necromancer gray to field gray to brighten it back up. And then I believe I did a 1-to-3 ratio in several areas. And then my brightest highlights were just a pure field gray. After I'd finished the skin, I went back to that knee pad and went with True Copper from War Paints, and using a kind of splayed out brush, did some stippling motions to get areas in which the copper was still shining through the patina. Now, some of it was heavier than others, and I did that on purpose just to show the variation of the metal being scraped when the orc knelt down to fire. And after I finished with that, I let that dry. And began the process of doing rusted steel. So I'm going to take cream coats, iron oxide. I'm going to take a better brush than the one I used for the copper because I wanted this to be a little bit more uniform, and basically started stippling this in all the areas that would end up being steel. So like the cleaver, the back plate, the helm, and the cross beams of the crossbow. Once that was dry, I brought out Army Painter War Paint's gunmetal, and using a slightly more fizzled brush than the last one, went about and stippled this in various areas on the same regions: the back metal plate, the cleaver, the helm, and the cross beams of the crossbow. But I also used this on the coral heads. While I waited for those areas to dry, I brought out Citadel's Neelic Oxide and decided that I was going to apply this to the knee pad to kind of tone it down a little bit from the copper. When I put it on, it looked a little too thick, so I cleaned off my brush, and while it was still moist, I wiped some of it off just so you could still see some of the copper through that. And then, since the steel regions were dry, I went ahead and brought out Strong Tone. Now, these regions had some rust on them, and I wanted the Strong Tone to reinforce that while you could still see the steel, it was discolored. And I was pretty happy with this look. The other thing I did off camera that you can see in the shot is I painted the orc's tusk with skeleton bone just to make them a little bit more prominent. I also applied a base and paste and painted the stonework that the base came with. I'm pretty happy with the way this looks. Happy Orctober. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and or comment on this video. Once again, it will help me grow. Thank you very much, and you have a good day.